Welcome into the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. TJ Pittinger, Tom Hannifan, Cole Thompson coming to you at night. We were just talking Power 2 after dark. We had some stuff. Actually, it was just me. It was my fault. But we had some stuff going on through the day today. And so instead of going at noon, we're here at 8 p.m. Boys, how you doing?
Cole's a little sleepy.
I'm out. Listen, you guys realize that my job is to talk on sports talk for 4 hours nonstop right after I do a show. So usually it's like the pre-warm up for me to get ready for the actual day. This is now the wind down. And when you have a co-host that sometimes is a little frustrated or doesn't want to talk, or you have to carry it a little bit, you're like, all right, how much more do I got left in me? Like that's where your brain is at this point. So it's like, we're going to have a show. It's going to be great. I see what the first subject is, and I guess I have to be biased.
Yeah, we're gonna get you going early. So, hey, Tom, we've talked a little bit about like what you do. Like you do work a lot with TNA, and you're in the wrestling game. Cole, what for the people? I mean, people may know you from SEC Unfiltered, but what else do you do?
I am the producer and the third voice on a sports talk afternoon drive show here in Houston, Texas. That's simulcast on Space City Network. It's Sports Talk 790, the A-Team with Adam Clanton and Adam Wexler. So, and I'm the permanent fill-in host here for iHeartMedia. So, somebody's around. Guess what? I have to come on in. They're like, hey, this guy's out. Guess what? You're coming on in. There have been multiple days in the last, I think, like 3 weeks that I have done the 6 a.m. show. I've done the midday show, and then going right into my show, which is, again, a 4-hour program. So 8 hours of nonstop just being involved in radio. The power of, low pay for you just to go ahead and keep the dream alive, boys. We all know that feeling.
It's all Houston pro talk mostly. Do you guys jump into the SEC or college at all, or is it mainly Texans, Astros?
I forced them to talk about the SEC and college football. Like, I remember when I got hired, they're like, you can talk college football more than just the SEC. Brother, I promise you. Like, I am like, we have a dude here that is so WWE based, like everything about his life, he loves it. So I am channeling my inner Randy Orton. Brother, we are coming out here to give you a show. Like, I am full bet on you are having a conversation about college football with me if I'm coming on. Like,
that was very Hulk Hogan. That was not Randy Orton.
I am on no slate, Tom. I am nowhere near it today.
I'm just poking the bear at this point.
I say you're opening Pandora's box. Let it go.
Speaking of poking the bear, let's talk about the SEC a little bit. The SEC, there's a battle going on, and the way I had this labeled on the rundown there is SEC bias and SEC hate. I feel like I have a million thoughts on this. But I want Cole to start it. Almost like you're like the defense attorney and you want to save your, you want to make the defense attorney go first, right? Like when you're in court and the prosecution goes second. So tell me a little bit about, Cole, what are your thoughts on like SEC bias? Does the SEC, are they showing preferential treatment? What are your thoughts on some of the hate? Obviously, Danny Cannell, anytime something halfway bad happens to the SEC or they lose a big game, he jumps on, former Florida State quarterback and ACC homer. There aren't many of those that exist. But
apparently he's not an ACC homer. He just hates the SEC because God forbid you pull for another team just to show up on the actual super regional weekend. Then you're an ACC hater at that point. No, God forbid. Look, here's the way that I view this, and I'll say this as clear as day. Most people know me as probably the most fair, unbiased SEC reporter. I call it as is. I will talk about the Big 12 if they deserve that conversation. I will talk about the ACC if they deserve that right. I will talk about the Big 10 when they are delivering. And the Big 10 has won 2 national titles. I have no problem with that. But I do believe that strength of schedule and I do believe strength of conference means something, especially in the grand scheme of all things that we talk about with this sport being so prominent. And so this past week, especially with the way that the regionals went, the SEC had 13 teams be represented in the college baseball tournament to make it to Omaha. 2 teams are going. 2 are going. But here's the way that I view this. I completely will listen to you if you can go ahead and explain why the SEC doesn't deserve 13 teams. But tell me, and don't use the but the SEC is overrated. The SEC is X, Y, and Z. I don't like the SEC. Provide evidence. Because so many people love to go ahead and call out the SEC. People love to go ahead and blame the SEC for having overall, I would say, positive feedback from those up top because it is a money marketing machine. But the bottom line is that when I ask you, all right, also provide some context. Tell me why X, Y, and Z doesn't belong in and so does. Perfect example, Kentucky. Kentucky beat an ACC team in their own backyard in the regional to advance to the regional final in Clemson. But Clemson was a higher ranked seed. In my opinion, Kentucky should have never been to the college baseball tournament. They didn't have a good enough record. They had an underwhelming record in conference play. And I personally believe that UConn and Troy, two teams that had winning records in their respective conferences, probably belonged in. But I can go ahead and use that information. I can go ahead and say, when you look at the resumes, when you look at the records, when you look at what they were able to accomplish, how many ranked wins they had, how many matchups they had, it's very easy to go ahead and point out, yeah, the SEC maybe did get a little bit of favoritism. But most people don't want to hear that. Most people just want to hear the SEC is overrated. The SEC brings in the most money, so therefore they're going to get the most representation. The SEC always seems to let you down because of we think that they're just getting the best approval rating by everybody else out there, but they don't want to give facts. If you want to go ahead and show up to the party and tell me why the SEC is getting quote-unquote overrated treatment, then provide evidence when you can back it up and say, this is why X, Y, and Z needs to be belong in. But most people, they can't do that. They just like to say, like Dana Cannell, SEC overrated, SEC overrated, SEC overrated. All right, why? Explain. Because they are. That's not an answer, nitwit. That's just a clarification. And by the way, facts and opinions, they may sound a lot like the same, but I hate to break it to you. Your opinion is not going to hold up in the court case of law, which is the fact that the SEC, every single year, with their strength of record, their conference schedule, their resume, their ranked matchups, and how many times we saw a top 25 number attached to their name is probably why they have the highest representation.
So I think I like what Cole says. I think there's gray to everything, right? Like nothing is all one way or the other. And I think that nuance obviously doesn't happen on X or on social media or different places. I do think top to bottom, the SEC is the best conference in football, in basketball, in baseball, certainly with Texas and Oklahoma now in, a couple of Big 12 teams, certainly in softball too now. So in your major sports, yeah, like I agree. I mean, you probably even throw women's basketball up there too, although, UConn and stuff, there's some other powers that are outside of that. However, I do agree. I think you look at a team like you mentioned, Kentucky. I kind of think the same thing about Miami, and not just being a Miami hater, but they were terrible to finish the season. Lost their last three series. Lost in round one. Got shelled by Cal, who was terrible. They're in Durham, and then they go in and they do the same thing. They beat Alabama to knock them into the losers bracket in game one, and they end up winning that regional too. One-off results in a tournament, though, just the Kentucky loss, just the Bama loss in the baseball tournament. I don't know how big of a deal that is. The Vandy loss, the Texas loss, those are certainly bigger, and you might point to those and say, like, hey, what are we doing here? But I do think the SEC gets some. I think what happens is that the SEC is really, really, really good at the top, and they're really, really good at the middle. And some of their average to below average teams get propped up because of that, especially in a metric-based system like RPI, like KenPom, that values those good quality losses. Florida State this year, you want kind of a factual thing, and certainly I'm bringing this as a Florida State homer. Florida State lost to North Carolina in a series, lost the series 2-1, and dropped like 9 spots in RPI. Where North Carolina was a top 4 RPI team, when a top 5 SEC team in RPI loses on the road or loses a series in baseball, there's not that same kind of drop. So I do think that with some of our advanced analytics, with some of our advanced metrics that automatically favor those teams to start a season, when the top teams get to the end of the year, there is a little bit of inherent bias that happens. You look at S&P Plus right now, that factors a lot of things in. One of those being production or returning production and recruiting rankings, which the SEC does far and above better than everybody else. I have no problem admitting that. When you're using those advanced metrics, when you're using those systems to as a starting point, I do think it benefits. Georgia's going to go out and make the playoff one way or another this year, right? Texas is going to go out and make the playoff one way or another this year. That's not, we know that. But a team that's kind of average or below that threshold just a bit, they're going to get propped up because, shoot, you lose to Georgia and Texas, those don't even really count as losses on your schedule. And then I think the same thing happened a little bit in basketball. The SEC got a couple of fringe teams in at the end. Now, the SEC still had really elite teams. Florida wins the title. Auburn, I'm not taking anything away from Florida or Auburn or Texas or Georgia in football, or I know they lost, but Vandy or LSU, Arkansas, like, yes, those teams absolutely deserved it. I think it helps out in getting those extra teams that you just mentioned. Should UConn have made it? Should another team have made it? Should a couple of those basketball teams at the very, like a Texas A&M, should they have made the turn? So that's where I think it means a little bit more for the SEC, right? To use the pun. As far as the hate they get, this is interesting to me, and I do want to get Tom's take on this too. As far as the hate that the SEC gets, it feels like to me, 2 points here. One, the hate isn't really directed at the conference as much as it's directed at the fans. I think SEC fans get more hate. I hate Florida because they're our rival, but I don't really hate Georgia. Everybody hated Alabama for a long stretch because they were so good. I don't hate Texas or Ole Miss I love LSU. Just they seem like a very fun program. I like their program a lot. If I wasn't a Florida State fan, that'd probably be who I'd gravitate towards in the SEC. I think it's directed toward the fans, and I think SEC fans are almost miffed by that. They're almost shocked by that, and I can't figure out that side as to why they're surprised, because when you're the best, you are automatically hated. Look at LeBron, look at the Yankees, look at just anybody that's great, which the SEC is objectively great. It's a little funny to me that they're like, how can all these people hate us so much? And it's like, because you're the best. We hate all the, ask a Ronaldo fan who they hate the very most. It's Messi. Who do Messi fans hate it's Ronaldo. That is just so natural in sports that it miffs me a little bit that SEC fans are like, how can they hate us? And it's like, we hate everyone that's great. That is what today's sports realm is. We hated the Blackhawks when they won 3 in a row. We hated the Bruins. Everyone hates the Florida Panthers right now. So, I don't know, man. So Tom, what do you think?
It's funny because obviously I'm a lifelong Big Ten guy. So my entire life I had no emotional disposition towards the SEC. So it was always like, yeah, the SEC plays really good football and it's just a different culture. It's a different atmosphere altogether. I think with the advent of the college football playoff and that expanding and all those sorts of things in the SEC beating its chest louder and louder, I think that's been a big reason why there's been so much hate. And a lot of that comes from Greg Sankey. Hell, it comes from the coaches. It doesn't often come from the players. You will hear the players talk about man, it's just different when you hear them talk about the level of competition going to the NFL or something like that. You hear it a lot from the fans, obviously. The thing that I get thrown by as someone who's a Big Ten fan is I can reasonably make the argument that the Big Ten is top heavier than the SEC is, and the SEC is deeper in college football. And I look at most of the schedules, we did the SEC win totals the other week, and I was like, I wouldn't want this schedule. Penn State is a 2-game schedule. It's you host Oregon, you're at Ohio State. Brutal. You guys have 6 games minimum on your schedule that it's might lose this one. So that I like because it is great competition. But that's the impossible task that we now have with college football, being fans and being people who analyze the sport is, well, how do you make this orange and compare it to this apple? And that's the argument we're going to have into oblivion. And we're trying to find an answer to, but we're not even close.
But let me bring it up this way. It just comes down to you, and this is a very good selling point. I looked this year at the tier 2 of the Big Ten, and I'm saying to myself, there's a lot of teams that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what Washington's going to be this year. I'm excited to see what Illinois can be. I want to see the revamp of what we're going to get from Indiana this year. Minnesota still has a really good run game. Iowa's always going to be in that realm of 8-9+ wins. Nebraska, I think, could actually break on through. The rule effect year 3 is on the horizon. But that's where the SEC has beaten everybody. And they do it consistently. Because in most years, it's, hey, the tier 2 team in the Big Ten, 8-4, maybe 9-3. And then the other one's 8-4. And then the tier 3 tier is 7-5. The tier 2 tier in the SEC is 90% of the time 9-3, the bare minimum, if not 10-2, being in that same range. So it's like, that's why the SEC looks down on people. It's not because of, hey, we just think that we have the best team in college football. Because also, keep in mind that just not only can we say, before the last 2 years, 16 of the last 17 national championships featured an SEC team, and 13 of the last 17 winners came from the SEC. But we can also talk about that the last 2 years, the team that was playing for a shot at going to the national title was in the running until the final 2 minutes against the eventual national champion. That's just a fact. That's what happened. But you also got to look at the pathway and what it took to get there. You have teams that are going up against, I don't know, like a ragtag South Carolina roster that will finish the year 10-2 against an Ole Miss team that was able to beat you but then lose to Kentucky. I mean, like, that's the difference of the SEC versus the Big Ten. The level of competition and the way that you're able to kind of reinvent yourself after losing a game to a top 10 team, but then beating another top 10 team the following week on the road speaks incredible volume about where the SEC is. And you know what? If you want to hate on the SEC, that's totally understandable. But my problem here, and my problem has always been, you hate on the SEC because the SEC usually gets the most representation. But yet the first time that I ask you, explain to me in any capacity where BYU versus Alabama on FanDuel, on DraftKings, on any single betting line, it says, oh, Alabama is favored by 2 touchdowns. You're saying, oh, but that's not fair because if they had a worse record than them last year. It's not based off of record only. It's based off of resume. It's based off of ranked wins. It's based off of recruiting. It's based off of metrics. It's based off of every single number that you look at in terms of level of competition and the consistency factor. Like, I remember hearing people talk about, why was BYU not in the running or Iowa State not in the running to get that extra seed in the college football playoff if SMU was somehow winning the ACC and Clemson was knocked out. Because if you have to look at every single metric and in every single capacity, South Carolina was better offense than BYU. Ole Miss was better offense than BYU. Alabama was better offense than BYU. Okay, well, what about defense? The exact same things I just said can be flipped on over to the other side of the football. It's not that I'm hating on the Big 12 or I'm hating on the ACC. I'm looking at this from a sporadic phase of, well, let's go through every single metric. The SEC is the more dominant conference, which is why if you want to hate on it, that's fine. But just say you hate on it. Don't say that it's because of, oh, they get this special treatment. Go ahead and play their schedule and tell me what you come out with your roster. Go ahead and put one of them in the Big 12. Tell me what it's like to go ahead and see an actual Big 12 national champion.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the playoff and stuff, I mean, that's an impossible task, right? I think I don't love the hypothetical of who would win this game head to head, because I think I said this maybe last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Alabama could have lost the game to Georgia, and I would still take them head to head against BYU. Right? They could have gone 7-5, and I probably would have taken them head to head against BYU. Like, they could have dropped another one. I don't know what their next closest, South Carolina, right? They could have lost to South Carolina and Georgia, and if the line was being offered at even money, I'd bet my mortgage on Alabama to beat BYU. But there has to become a point where we say, okay, your results here have to matter, right? And that's where the impossible task is, I think, for the committee, who, I don't know, it'd be hard for me to sit here and say that I didn't think the committee had inherent biases in them, especially as a Florida State fan after 2 years ago. But it would be very difficult for me to say, yeah, they're completely unbiased and they're just going on who they think the best team is. Best is just so subjective, right? And that's why it's a very hard balance of best and resume and results on the field and advanced analytics and metrics and things like that. But I don't love the hypothetical of who do we think would win this game? Because like I said, Bama could have gone 7-5, and I'd probably pick them against most of the teams that were close to them in that range, to where your results have to matter. Also, BYU's schedule that was put into place 8 years ago because we schedule games out a decade in advance, certainly no fault of their own that they played their schedule. Also no fault of their own that they're in the conference that they're in when all these teams join conferences, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, right? And so what are we supposed to do about that, right? So I don't know. That's a tough situation as far as like the playoff goes. That's obviously a whole different debate, but I agree with I'm getting choked up. I agree with you though. Bama would have beat them.
Okay, go ahead and have your sip of water. It has nothing to do with me with who would have won this matchup. What it has to do with at the end of the day is the level of competition that you play against. And sometimes, I'll go a step further. Sometimes that's in your favor, and sometimes that's not. Look at Oklahoma and look at Florida. Look at how they finished the year last year. Look at who they went up against. Look at the battles and the road trips that they had to go on. And one went 8-5, and the other one went 6-7. But you throw them in the same conference where they don't have a ranked matchup every other weekend, where they're playing against more competition that probably is at their vicinity and at their level. What's their record? And the same token can be asked when it comes to the opposing sideline. Like Florida State, and TJ, this is not a shot at Florida State, even though I know that you don't care, but like Florida State, every single year, they're middle of the pack in ACC recruiting rankings. That's a negative. They go and they bring in the transfer portal players. The baseline of your foundation in building a program is recruiting. And so when you have to replace all of that production year in and year out, you're going to drop off a little bit. And sometimes that's what you have to look at when you're seeing, hey, why is Florida still a team that you think can maybe go 10-2 in the in the ACC? Because of what they've been able to recruit, the type of players that they're targeting, the type of players that they're stealing from a Florida State or from a Miami, the type of players that are coming to the SEC. That's another factor that goes into it. The way that you're able to land talent, the blue chip talent, whether or not you want to agree, is sometimes a little bit overrated when it comes to our ranking styles. Still landing premier players, if they're coached up properly, they will get to that next level of their game to where they will be a factor in helping you make a run to the postseason.
So I think what we've established here, outside of Florida and LSU and Arkansas, pretty abysmal postseason for the SEC in the three major sports.
Hey, I'm not going to complain. They won. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. It just means less this year. But also, hey, how was your Super Regional? That was a fun weekend, wasn't it?
I was sick last week, so I didn't get to catch any of it.
You didn't miss much, except for really everyone losing.
So,
welcome to my side, buddy. Come on.
It is fun, though. The SEC folks, they'll also. So I think the one more SEC thing, and then we'll move on to actual ball talk.
Some more SEC things with ball talk.
Yeah. It is funny watching, I saw Chris and others, man, I got quoted and everything, on different things. No ACC. I do want to put this just out into the ether. I think fans of teams, like there are legitimately SEC fans, right? There are no ACC fans. Like, I just want to speak that into the ether. No one likes this conference.
I think the only people that like the ACC are attending the men's basketball tournament in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Right.
That's the diehard audience.
Yeah, like people will use the ACC's minor success to make fun of the SEC, and it's almost like look at these idiots over here doing better than y'all did. Like that's the way it gets used. And then when ACC teams lose, Florida State fans, Clemson fans, North Carolina fans, Duke fans, like fans of all those teams are like pointing and laughing. There's no like, Murray State, or oh man, Duke lost to Murray State. Like all ACC program fans are happy about that, minus Duke, are happy about that result. And so it is funny to watch, SEC fans. My buddy, Blake will go, oh, how about that, ACC fans? And I think everybody's just like, yeah, we're happy about that. We're happy when our rivals lose. I understand the concept of wanting your conference to do well during the regular season so that it helps your RPI and strength of schedule and, KenPom for basketball. I understand that aspect. When it gets to the postseason, that none of that matters, right? Like in really any of these conferences, like you're not going to see a Big Ten fan going all out for Michigan because they, it makes our conference look good. So anyway,
we haven't won a national championship in football the last 2 years. We have to dominate everything else. That's the rules. It has to be this way. You can't have anyone else be successful.
Shout out to Texas.
My favorite indicator of how bad the ACC is in comparison to like the Big Ten and the SEC is that you don't have to get far down the list of the standings in the ACC when you get to the teams of like, what are their expectations for this season? And you're like, who cares? Like, you really don't have that for 80 to 90% of the SEC and the Big Ten, respectively. Like, once you start getting down to like the Purdue's, the Rutgers, the Mississippi States, like that sort of thing, those schools, you're like, okay, they exist, they're there. But like the ACC, you get to like Virginia Tech, and you're like, best of luck this upcoming season. Yeah, like UVA. Like, what are you guys really trying to accomplish? Nothing. They just put a football team out there so people buy some tickets. They sell some scholarships. The wheel keeps moving.
I think there's like 5 ACC teams that actually care. That might be
a stretch.
Yeah, I can name 5. I feel like 5.
Florida State, Clemson, Miami.
SMU now, yeah.
SMU.
I think NC State and North Carolina care. I think that's 6 to 7-ish.
About football?
NC State cares about football. NC State cares about football. Yeah.
I think North Carolina understands like basketball is but like we've got to be relevant in football or we're gonna we can't support what we want, what we like better. I think North Carolina is getting it.
Hey,
I think they made a stupid hire, but I think their hire kind of proved that they were trying to make a splash. Like, I don't think it's going to work, but I think their hire kind of speaks to that.
Duke's spending money, and I can appreciate it. They're spending money for their coach, Manny Diaz, to eventually leave them to go to another school, just like Mike Elko did. Like everybody else is going to do.
Hopefully not his alma mater. All right, let's talk about College Game Day going to Ohio State versus Texas. Lee Corso's final game there, where he first put on the Buckeye Brutus headgear, helmet. It's not a helmet. I guess headgear is the right word. Is this okay? So one thing I do hate is, I'll get both of you guys' takes, but I'll give mine quickly. I do hate how I really do care about this game, but I don't know how much I care about this game because I think both these teams are going to the playoff one way or the other. I guess it'll be bragging rights. If Ohio State wins, I can make fun of Texas, even though I just call them a Big 12 team anyway. I can pick fun at the SEC and post my fun GIF afterwards. But does the importance on this game mean, no pun intended, mean just a little bit less because of where we're at with the playoff, or how jacked are you for it?
You're 100% right. I'll just give you that.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's so early in the season. Like, if you put this anywhere else, it would have mattered more, I think. Like, this is one of those games that you can get to late October, November, they're going to be like, well, they've done this, so that feels like a long time ago and it gets forgotten about. But from a storyline perspective, this game has literally everything you could look for, which I'm very excited to see what Arch Manning is. I'm very excited to see what Julian Sayin is as the starting quarterback potentially for Ohio State this upcoming season. Like, there are a lot of big questions. Ryan Day and company coming off of a national championship. You lose both your coordinators. Jim Knowles, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country, off to Penn State. Brian Hartline is now your offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly is off to the National Football League. So a lot of changes there. Meanwhile, Texas, okay, you flirted with you were in the Final Four and you flirted with some real success in the playoff. Is Sark going to be able to get over the hump with this crazy McDucks style amount of money that Texas has to play with the cap looming, like all those sorts of things? I'm dying to see what Arch Manning actually is. I think by halfway through the season, there's a chance that ESPN and all the other networks have made us hate Arch Manning because of how much they're going to talk about Arch Manning. Like, it's going to get bad quickly with Arch, unfortunately. And he seems like a nice kid. To the point about Corso, I have so many wonderful memories thanks to College Game Day, thanks to Lee Corso for many, many years. Lee Corso has not been in good health for many years. I have been stunned to see him on television for this long. I am glad they are giving him a proper send-off. He clearly means the world to everybody that makes that show possible and to people that have watched the show for many, many years. it's time for Lee to retire, take care of his health, and be with his family. So that's the most important thing to me. But it's a long time coming on that front. I think the symmetry is really nice. The headgear, like you said, TJ, I love that. But this is an awesome way to start the season. Like, let's not forget, it wasn't too long ago, with a handful of years, we were all complaining that the games in week 0 and in September sucked. And now it's like you're getting this barn burner right out of the gates. I'm all for it.
Look, my big thing that I just look at, and it has nothing really to do with this matchup, more so it has everything to do with television. The fact that you're going to have big noon kickoff and college game day on the same location for an 11 a.m. kick, it can be a little frustrating. It can be a little bit problematic, especially because one network is saying goodbye to its legendary broadcaster, and the other one wants to start off the season on the right note. For me personally, I look at it from a gains perspective as well. The implications that are going to go on in Death Valley 2.0, Clemson, South Carolina, between the Tigers and the Tigers, has so much more storyline for the long term than this game. In my opinion, when I look at Texas and Ohio State, the matter of questions that I have in this is more so which one would be ranked higher if they win this game and they finish with the same record in the college football playoff? Which team is going to put themselves in a better position to get a bye with that first round? And which one is going to be hosting a playoff matchup? Like, that's what I take away from this, because of both these teams have great coaches. Both these teams have great recruiting staffs. Both these teams have up-and-coming quarterbacks that are both being documented in as full-time QB1s, whether it be, a Lincoln Keenholz or a Julian Sang or Arch Manning for that matter. They have a lot of young talent that's being brought up and asked to now step up to the plate. They have a lot of transfer portal talent coming on in. Like, so many people focus in on what Texas added to the defensive line. Keep in mind that both teams added in 2 offensive weapons this past offseason. Max Clare and CJ Donaldson are now headed to the likes of Columbus, and Jack Andrews and Emmett Mosley are heading down to Austin. So there's a lot of things that are going with this team on both sides, to where if there are some faults, if there are some issues, there are some questions, they're not going to be answered in this matchup. You want them to be answered by probably week 5 or week 6, because of then you have to play against Michigan. Then you had to play against an Oregon. Then you had to play against a Penn State. And the same thing for Texas. You got to play against a Florida. You got to play against Texas A&M. You got to face off against a Georgia squad. So you want those to be answered. But this is one of those games where whatever happens, it doesn't deteriorate my long-term opinion on the Buckeyes or the Longhorns. Texas could win by 40, and they still could find a way to get shut out in the swamp against Florida. Ohio State could lose on a game-winning field goal, and they yet still run through the Big Ten, punch their ticket to Indianapolis, and are hoisting up another conference title. Like, both things are going to still be in my brain, regardless of the outcome of this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the game that has the most implications would have been LSU and Clemson. I think so.
To me, it's the game of the year.
Yeah, Clemson's a little bit of an interesting position, because I think Clemson can afford this loss a little bit more. Because of their ACC schedule. I think Clemson could afford to lose to LSU. LSU loses this game, and you're kind of looking at their SEC schedule like, all right, well, they got to play Bama. They got to play Florida early in the year, just I think 2 or 3 weeks after that Clemson game. That gets – they got to play – I think they go on the road to Ole Miss this time. They got to play A&M. Like, you look at the rest of their schedule, and you're like, man, they're on kind of thin ice. Like, they can lose one more time, but, like, that's it. And so it's like, if they're not in Atlanta and they've got 3, they're 9-3, are they getting in, right? Are they going to be that first team out like Bama was last year? Whereas Clemson could lose this game and still, I think, run through the ACC. I mean, Clemson loses this game by 10. I still think they're the betting favorites, unless Miami just comes out and waxes Notre Dame, opening week. Then that could change some things. But Clemson could lose this game, and I still think they're the ACC favorite. So I think the game actually means a little bit more to LSU. Also, you think about them being 0-5 to start the year, the last 5 years. I mean, Brian Kelly needs to get off to a good start. I'm a little interested, and again, this is very homerish. This is very biased. I'm okay with both of you telling me I'm an idiot. A small part of me thought that they would go to Tallahassee for this.
I understand why.
Corso obviously graduated.
I understand why.
I understand that connection, but like the game doesn't warrant it.
Okay, how about this?
To be fair, like Texas and Ohio State warrants it to a smidge, in my opinion, compared to Clemson and LSU.
Yeah. Is it a hot take to say, we talk about implications. Is it a hot take to say that the loser of this game is either fired or going into next year as a on the hottest of seats?
For which game? Clemson?
Alabama, Florida State.
It's a hot take for at least Alabama, not for Florida State.
If Alabama loses on the road as a 2-touchdown favorite, then you look at the rest of their schedule. Like,
what if they win the SEC?
Around.
Yeah, like if they win out, I don't know.
It's a moot point.
That's tough to expect.
Now,
Are you thinking they have a legitimate chance to win out if they lose to Florida State?
Again, brand new quarterback to break it on the road in Doak Campbell. Hot summer August day. A lot of crazy things can happen out there.
I was going to say crazy things happen. Like when Florida State lost to Jacksonville State at home.
Don't give me hope for that game.
Toledo marched into Mississippi State and beat an SEC team. Weird things happen early in the year.
I understand the point about the connection with Corso. I don't think you would pick Alabama, Florida State over Ohio State, Texas. I think the sheer volume of storylines the networks are far too invested in to not pick it. Like Arch Manning is the golden goose that everybody's been waiting to arrive, or the egg that the golden goose is going to lay, better yet. So, and you have the defending national champions. You have two of the more recognizable coaches in the sport to talk about. And it's not to say that you don't have that with LSU and Clemson. Oh my God, you have stuff to talk about there, but you have more ammo with Ohio State and LSU. And unfortunately, nothing against Alabama, FSU, or LSU, Clemson. Like they just aren't that close in that department.
My big thing is that you're breaking in two new quarterbacks that you have no idea what to expect. It could be a 4-interception game for Arch Manning, a 3-interception game for Julian Sang, and it doesn't even say that much about their defenses. When I look at Clemson and LSU, it's QB1 versus QB2 going up against each other on primetime Saturday night in a place that both teams call Death Valley, in a place with both teams wearing the Tiger logo, and with both teams kind of being built to win a national title. But one bad game, one underwhelming performance automatically can throw off the rest of your season. And this is something that I think is very important for both Dabo Swinney and Brian Kelly to start off the season on a hot note with.
For me, not to cut you off, TJ, I say this all the time in wrestling, and it's the same thing in sports and entertainment. It's stars and it's stories. So if you're talking about the outcome of the game, that's fine. But we're talking about as you're sitting at this point in time in June and you had to pick which game would you do as that opening, big noon, college game day, Corso send off, all that sort of stuff. You have stars galore with Ohio State, Texas. You have stories galore. It goes a little bit less down with Clemson and LSU, and it goes even more so down with Florida State and Alabama. Easily.
Okay, humor me just real fast. If he did not put Brutus Buckeyes head on in 1996, and he put on, let's just say it was the Clemson head, they would be in Death Valley. And I think of the fact that he started his career with going to Ohio State, ending his career going with Ohio State, that also was a storyline that played such a major implication.
I think it's a convenient excuse.
Sure.
I think I'll back there a little bit. Corso's first game on the road, he was a Florida State Notre Dame game, and he put on an FSU hat. So I know that's not that they don't do the headgear for Florida State for obvious reasons. But he actually has a couple of times, and they've cut that out. But I do think they could have gotten away. I think they could have. It may not have made sense from a marketing perspective. I think they could have gotten away with Florida State and Alabama, and everybody would have said like, hey, that game's going to suck, but we get it, right? So I think that they could have gotten away. Honestly, I think they could have gotten away with anything, especially when you think about the fact that Herbie's probably calling the night game, right, in Death Valley. And so, like, honestly, if they'd have picked any of the three, I think you could have in your mind said, oh, that makes sense why they did that, Although I will agree, the best game with the most storylines is the one they picked, and it makes a lot of sense. All right, speaking about Florida State, to go from 13 wins to 2 wins last year made them not only the biggest flop of the year, but maybe the biggest flop of all time. I haven't looked through every single record book that ever existed from, before World War II, but it's got to be up there. And then on the other side of that, look at Arizona State from 3-9 the year before to 11-3. So we had a huge flop. We had a team go from worst to first. Let's go around the horn. And nobody is going to do, at least I hope not for their mental health, because this was hell for me. Nobody is going to do what Florida State did, but who's going to have a big drop off like that? Who's going to go from 8, 9, 10 wins down to 3, 4, whatever, 12 wins down to 6? Or what's your big drop off team to keep an eye out for? And what's your big, worst to first? Hey, had a really rough year last year, but they could make a big splash. Who wants to go first?
Tom?
I will say a team that could fall is the aforementioned Crimson Tide. And that I don't know how far they could fall, but I think it's reasonable to say that the people in Tuscaloosa, the fans of this team, have extraordinarily high expectations for Kalen DeBoer, and they weren't met last year. So granted, they've done a nice job building that program steadily over time. He's gotten the staff in place that he wants. So that incremental progress is there. Those fans don't care about incremental progress. Big question mark at quarterback going into this upcoming season, although there is confidence from what I understand in Tuscaloosa about that. So I could just see a situation where Alabama just slips and maybe just narrowly misses the playoff again, and then everybody's pissed. That would be my flop. And then a riser. The Big 12 is just so like, it's like, what do you quantify that as? Like, I saw something on, I think it was Cover 3, where it was like, you could reasonably bet every single team in the Big 10 to win it and make out probably breaking even by the end of the year. I don't know if this is necessarily a big rise, but I think people are expecting them to drop off. I think Colorado with Caden Salter actually steps up and they do something a little bit bigger than they did last year, because I think the quarterback play is going to be better. So I'm excited to see what that could be. It's not something where it's focused around one guy on the offense with Travis Hunter. So I could see Colorado going there. And then also, if you're a betting person and you want to legitimately bet on somebody going from worst in their conference to the best in their conference, there's only one choice: Washington State. There's only 2 teams in the conference.
Quick question for both of you.
50-50 bet. It's the greatest bet in the world. Yeah.
Does Caden Salter get drafted higher than Shedeur?
I don't know if I can answer this yet.
I love how ESPN's already asking the question. It's like, oh, Shedeur going to start week 1? Is like, they're like, why don't we squeeze some more, get some more water into this sponge and then wring it out. Yeah.
There's a reason I can't answer this question, because we're talking about teams that are regressing. I have Colorado as that team. I look at the Buffaloes going into this year, and how much of that roster was based off of just the sheer leadership of Travis Hunter. I don't think enough people pay attention to his attitude and his overall charisma on the football field, in that clubhouse and in that locker room. People adored him, and the way that he presented himself was such a major factor that we got to follow his process. We got to follow his identity. We got to follow his persona. And he did earn the right to, I think, have his number retired, because if he won a Heisman Trophy. He was a two-way player. He was a phenomenal two-way player. But now you're losing 2 critical positions. And on top of that, you are starting fresh with the quarterback, whether it be Caden Salter, who was coming off a down year last year at Liberty, or Juju Lewis, who's going to be broken into for the first time in Big 12 football, where when he was at USC, there was a very good shot that he was probably going to sit for at least 1 full year. Colorado's schedule also has a lot of hiccups along the way. They open the season against Georgia Tech on August 29th. That is a game to where, if you believe in the Yellow Jackets, it's going to be a bloodbath. I think Houston's going to be more improved with that game on September 12th. BYU, I still think is going to be very promising. That game at 9:15 on September 27th. At TCU, at Utah versus Iowa State. An improved West Virginia team potentially, Kansas State, Arizona State, and a lot of questions when it comes to their offensive and defensive line. There's a scenario where, yes, Colorado, I think, could still be a very promising team in terms of the long future with Deion Sanders at the helm. But I am not buying a lot of stock going into this year that there's going to be brightness out in Boulder. But on the flip side, Tom brought this up. It's the Big 12. You can make any single bet, and it may end up panning out. I think Houston could be one of these teams that we see go from a 4-8 record or a 3-9 record underneath Willie Fritz into an 8-4, 9-3 record. I love the addition of Connor Wigman. I love what they have at the tight end position now with Tanner Koizil. I think they brought in some really good wide receivers like Amari Thomas from UAB. I love the addition of Slade Nagel as their new offensive coordinator. Austin Armstrong, I think, is a better fit for a smaller tier defensive coordinator position than at a big time school such as the likes of what you saw with Florida. I think their schedule also is going to have a couple of matchups where it will eventually give them a slight advantage at times. So Willie Fritz is a program builder. Willie Fritz does a very good job of targeting the right amount of talent and bringing in the right personnel. Don't be shocked if the Cougars going into November have a couple of must-see games that probably won't determine if they're going to be in the college football playoff or going to Arlington, but they might end up knocking somebody out to where their resume is going to look a lot more promising, and they may end up with a number attached to their name going into December.
All right, I'll go to the ACC for both of mine. I think Duke had a really nice year last year, but they have a chance to just absolutely have a putrid year. They went 9-3 in the regular season. They did lose their bowl game, but their schedule is tough. They welcome Illinois in week 2. That could be a loss. They go to Tulane in week 3. That could be a loss. They got to play NC State. That's a really tough one always. They play Syracuse. Both these teams have 5.5 as their win total over under. The loser of that game is probably not going to hit their over under. They do have to play the Georgia Tech team that Cole just mentioned. They have to go to Clemson. They play UNC late in the year. They do get games against UConn, Virginia, Wake Forest, Cal's one that's kind of up in the air, and they play Elon as well. They could legitimately go from 9 wins to 3 or 4. Their over-unders 5.5. Not crazy to think that they could go 4-8. Now, I like Manny Diaz. I hope they're a little bit better than that. But they have a brutal schedule. Their out of conference is brutal too with Tulane and Illinois. They could really fall off the map after a good year last year. And then, Manny's name that's kind of getting floated around here and there could not be as sexy to people out there looking. And almost by default, I mean, maybe it's not a surprise. I think Florida State rises pretty high just based on what their record was last year. Their over-under this year is 7.5. Obviously, winning 2 games last year. If they can get anywhere close to that over-under, they will improve by 5 or 6 wins. If they can find an upset somewhere and then take care of business, they could improve on that by 7 wins. They are truly a wild card and unknown. They could go 4-8 again this year if things fall off the rails and Castellanos gets hurt or anything like that happens. But I think almost by default, they will be one of the teams that improves their win total the most this year. And then adding one in, they weren't, just the absolute worst thing in the world. And I'm not sold that they go crazy, but Oklahoma could be that sneaky pick out of the SEC that goes 10-2 because they got the best quarterback and the best running back combo out of the portal. If the defense is really good again this year, Oklahoma could really surprise people. Their schedule is the toughest in the country, and so that makes it very unlikely that they win 10 games, in my opinion. But shoot, stranger things have happened, and if they can really click with Mateer and Ott and all the guys that they have there on the defense, Oklahoma could certainly be a team that increases their win total by 3 or 4 in the SEC and is talked about as a potential playoff team at the end of the year. I know Cole. I'm not arguing with that. I know Cole likes my Oklahoma pick, and then FSU just kind of by default.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I couldn't pick Oklahoma because of you said that they were you want to go bottom of the barrel, and 6-6 to me is just not bottom of the barrel.
Right. But if you had 4 wins in the SEC, I mean, and they play Michigan, if they get to 10-2, man, that's, I don't know.
Again, if you say they go 8-4 this year, for most teams in the SEC with that schedule, that's a 10-2 record.
Yeah,
literally, that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, if they can get up to 9-3, they might make the playoff at 9-3. If there's not a bid stealer in there like Clemson was last year.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to a mailbag. We put out a tweet earlier. Make sure you're following all of us on Twitter. TJ Pittinger, Cole Thompson, and Tom Hannifan. I think it's Mr. Cole Thompson over there. From Jackson, who is the best player? We'll go rapid fire on these just to make them quick so we can get to the wild card and get out of here around 9 o'clock. Who's the best player in college football no one is talking about going into 2025? Cole, you go first. Then Tom, give me a pick for you as well.
I think Amari Thomas is a name that we got to give a little bit more attention to. I mentioned him for Houston. I really like his film. I think that he's going to go into a very offensive system this upcoming year. Very high on what he did last season. 62 catches, 670 yards, 8 touchdowns at UAB for a dysfunctional UAB team. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do with Connor Wigman as a starting quarterback. And I think that in this type of system with Slade Nagle calling the shots, he may be one of the more explosive wide receivers in the Big 12.
Give me Gio Lopez from UNC. I mean, this whole UNC season, we're really not sure what to expect, but reasonably, if Bill Belichick is focused on the season, then playing for maybe the greatest coach in the history of the sport has to be good for a quarterback when that coach has had success with a quarterback named Tom Brady in the past. So Gio Lopez, I think, presents the classic dynamic skill set that you need from a college quarterback. He put a lot of good stuff on tape at South Alabama, got it done in both capacities. So playing in the ACC, I think there's a lower bar to excite people and get people's attention than in other conferences. I think Gio Lopez could stand out.
No commentary. I'll just quickly say Jaden Ball at Florida. I think he'll be maybe the best running back in the SEC by the time it's all said and done. We'll see. Napier really likes to spread the love there. So he might finish with 600 yards and still be really elite, but just because of the way that they like to spread the rock there. Next up from Ross Taylor, with the new format of the CFP, which conference do you think gets a second team in, the ACC or the Big 12? I wonder if he's asking more about the new format that's coming with the 5-11 or this year. I'll answer both. I think it's the ACC. I think they have 3 teams that recruit well enough to contend for the college football playoff. Cole mentioned blue chip ratio earlier. I think Florida State, not that I expect Florida State to be anywhere close to that this year. I think Florida State, Clemson, Miami, even Florida State's down years. Mike Norvell's had a top 20 class every year except for his first year, which was the COVID year. Even with them being terrible last year, he pulled in a top 20 class. To me, those are the only 3 teams that can consistently compete for the playoff. I think the ACC will more often than not get the second team over the Big 12. I don't know if either of you disagree with that, but that's my take on that.
Zero disagreement.
I completely disagree, at least for this year. I like.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm talking in general.
Okay, because for this year, I like what the Big 12 has. I really think that there's 4 or 5 teams that all could finish with 10-plus wins and punch their way to Arlington. And if one is 11-1 and they lose in that final stage to, say, like a 10-2 Baylor team, you're not going to keep out an 11-2 Big 12 runner-up. It's a little bit different. And I think that there's 2 or 3 teams, Arizona State, Texas Tech. I wouldn't be shocked to see Kansas State with another year of Avery Johnson kind of taking that step forward, getting that range. This year, I would lean Big 12. Most years, I would lean ACC.
The only thing that will make the ACC interesting on that this year is how they play out of conference.
Yeah.
Clemson plays South Carolina and LSU. Miami plays Notre Dame and Florida. If both of them can handle business in the ACC and they do a good job out of conference, now obviously if Miami loses both their out of conference games, or if Clemson loses both their out of, that's a big deal. I think that I'm not betting on Miami to be able to handle business. I like Clemson a little bit better in their roster, but that would, Miami would, to me, is the only second team that can make it unless somebody really shocks in the ACC this year. I just don't know that there's another team close to where Clemson's level is or that'll be up there. But Miami goes 2-0 in those 2 out of conference games, then barring another late season Mario meltdown, they'll be fine. Can Notre Dame get I guess this is the new format from the Big Irish. Can Notre Dame get a first round bye without going undefeated with their schedule? Obviously this year they cannot, right? Because we still have the same format as last year as of now, right? Like that hasn't changed.
No, it's the new format now. Now the format's changing, I thought.
Wait, we're not just, has that changed already?
Yeah, it's changed. Now it's just the top 4 seeds go this year.
Okay, it's not the top 4. Okay.
For champions now.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I wasn't sure with everything that's being rumored on the front. I didn't know if this was this year or next year.
It's a mess. Yeah.
So question again, can Notre Dame get a first round bye without going undefeated with their schedule?
I say yeah. I genuinely don't understand all these people who are saying that Notre Dame has a relaxed schedule. Keep in mind, not only do they open the season against Miami, they also play against Texas A&M. I think is going to be vastly improved. They also play on the road against Arkansas. Whether or not you want to go ahead and say that Arkansas is a bottom dweller in the SEC, it still is an SEC team traveling to their proximity where they have a quarterback that may end up being one of the more slept-on players in college football. They also have to play against the Mountain West and G5 champion. They got to go play against USC that I think is going to be more improved. I think Pitt's a sleeper this year in the ACC. I like Eli Holstein a lot. Navy is not an easy game again to win against. I think NC State's going to be more improved with CJ Bailey. So this entire notion that Notre Dame has an easy schedule year in and year out, they still have 9 games against Power 4 opponents and a matchup on the road against Miami and Texas A&M to begin their season. So regardless of what you think about Notre Dame being an independent, if they go 11-1, they've earned the right to at least compete for that conversation of having a first round bye.
I completely agree. I could see them only losing the game to Miami outright at the top of the schedule. They could win out after that potentially. And let's not forget, you have to go to Syracuse to play in the Steve Angeli revenge game inside the Carrier Dome or whatever they call it now. So it's not an easy schedule, but in terms of SEC fans that might watch this, are like, oh, this isn't even close. And I will hear that argument. But still, I could see them going 11-1, dropping the opener at Miami. But yeah, I buy that Notre Dame being in the playoff without that.
Yeah, I'll buy that as well. I think they can, especially if they go. So at that point, they'd be going 2-0 against the SEC. They'd have a win against, like you said, USC. Yeah, I'd buy it. I'd buy them at 11-1. I also think that as much as I talked about SEC bias at the beginning, I think Notre Dame's brand bias is a real thing, and the chance at getting Notre Dame higher in your rankings is something that the committee will, in fact, do. I think if NC State played Notre Dame's schedule, they probably wouldn't. But Notre Dame also gets some help with brand bias as well. From Jasper, what's one non-conference? This is a good one. One non-conference game you wish was on the schedule this season? I would take like Florida State and Kennesaw State just to rack up another win. But what do you?
By the way, Kennesaw State could go from worst to first simply because of people playing EA Sports College Football 26. And now if you play the team more, you make more money. And people love Kennesaw State, apparently making it a Cinderella.
I play with them all the time. Yeah,
they're in Atlanta. It's a great pipe.
In reality, I'd take Colorado. I think Florida State, Colorado needs to happen with the Dion, Dion drama and stuff that's happened. I think that's one that I would take, regardless of FSU's record or expectations or anything like that. Like that would be a fun one personally for me. Cole, Tom, what you got?
They're no longer they're no longer a conference game, but I just like what I've seen so far from both of these coaches. Give me Kenny Dillingham versus Dan Lanning. I think that Oregon versus Arizona State would be a really interesting game. One quarterback being broken on in with Dante Moore, another quarterback with Sam Levitt, who's kind of going to be the poster boy for Big 12 football. A lot of missing production for Oregon, but all the money and resources in the world to be able to say, we are always going to be a player for the postseason. And Arizona State want to prove that they can be the big mecca in the Big 12. I just really like that matchup. And remember, Dan Lanning got Kenny Dillingham to leave Tallahassee to go to Eugene. And because of what he did with Bo Nix that year, he was able to turn out a really promising resume to where he was hired at his alma mater. So I'd love to see that matchup.
As a Penn State guy, we never got the answer to the question of what if Sean Clifford and Will Levis played against each other, because that was always a confusing thing. I would love to see Bo Prabula as the starting quarterback for Mizzou against Drew Allard, the starting quarterback for Penn State. Where it's played, I almost don't matter. I would love to see that game because Bo Prabula is a Pennsylvania guy, always grew up dreaming of playing at Penn State and got forced into a difficult situation with the transfer portal window and had to go find himself a job somewhere. So that I say as a homer, as a Penn State homer, I will say this. I would love to see UCLA at Tennessee. Oh my God, give me that game. Let me see Nico being crushed at Rocky Top. I would do that. That would just make my heart happy.
Would UCLA come out in that game shirtless? Would that
in the hills of Knoxville? And
I mean, yeah, why not? In LA at night, sometimes it's the 40s, 50s. You got to bundle up.
Duncan Morgan, which conferences? Where will the best QB play be? Which conference is the best QB play going into the season? So I don't know if he's asking like who.
I think what he's saying is which conference has the best quarterback play going into 2025.
Big 12.
Honestly, that was my guess.
Yeah, the SEC has a higher ceiling. We understand that Lagway and Manning could be 1-2 picks in 2 years in the draft. And so the ceiling there is insane for sure. Nussmeier way up there, Heisman favorite. But overall, I don't know that I'm, Manning and Lagway aren't there yet. And on week 4, we might turn around and say like, all right, well, it's obviously the SEC with how these three have played. But to start the year, I'd say the Big 12.
I think the Big 10 also has a sneaky under the radar kind of conversation because if Dante Moore hits, if DeMond Williams hits at Washington, if you get really good play from Nico now out at UCLA, plus you throw in what you're going to get with Julian Saint at Ohio State, Drew Aller, Luke Altmaier, you can see Fernando Mendoza have a really good start at Indiana. There's so much that I look at from that perspective of there's not proven commodities, but I feel really good about the middle tier, and I feel really good about the risers. I have questions when it comes to some guys in the SEC. I don't have those questions for the four main quartet of newcomers at big-time schools in the Big Ten. I don't.
Dude, imagine if Bryce Underwood takes off this year.
I forgot about him.
He'll be on Barstool Sports every single day of your life during football season. He will
be. Oh, God. Gradkowski coming on in from the FBS.
Yeah, Gronkowski.
Like, imagine Iowa has a quarterback for the first time ever. Like, what is this going to be? It's like, and it's me, an SEC quote-unquote homer, praising the Big Ten. I like their quarterback play as much as I like the Big 12s.
Yeah. I actually really like quarterback play all over the place. I mean, I'll say this. I like the top 6-ish in the ACC. Now, I don't think they're as deep, but I love Cade. I think I'm kind of in disagreement with Tom. I think Beck has a good year at Miami. I like Jennings. I like Haynes King. I like Miller Moss at Louisville. I like Mensah at Duke. Like I like the top 6 in the ACC and think they'll all have really good years. It drops off there. I mean, I don't even know who your next one is.
I would go Gio Lopez probably. And then
Gio Lopez up there.
I
actually think if he stays healthy, I do think Castellanos will have a good statistical year. I like Holstein. So I guess it's not like a complete fall off the face of the earth. But I like the ACC's top 5 or 6 for sure.
Margin of error is small in every single conference at quarterback play right now.
It is. And I think it's good. I don't think there's remember a couple of years ago, I don't know, I forget what it was, but I don't know. I was going to go down a rabbit hole.
Margin for error. So Bo Perbula allegedly got $1.5 million to go to Mizzou, a backup from Penn State. So that's the value on we think he'll be good at this position. That's how difficult it is to find a good quarterback in college football.
All right, it's 9:01. Do you guys want to do the wild card or push it to next week?
We can knock it out real fast, I think.
Real fast. Let's not leave the people hanging. Yeah.
All right. Wild card this week. What are the big headlines going to be? This is Cole's. So, Cole, maybe you should have introduced it. Yeah. But what are the biggest headlines that are crazy now, but you won't be shocked to read later on in 2025, once we're either through the football season or halfway through the football season? What are those shocking headlines? Cole, you started this out, so you can go first.
I will do. So we're each doing 2, but I'll start off with this one. Your ACC champion Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets are hosting a matchup at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Here's the deal. You've heard me before. I've talked about it many a time. I am a believer in what Brent Key has this year. I love the addition at wide receiver with Eric Rivers and Dane Patterson. I think Haynes King is your starting quarterback. Is great. Jamal Haynes is a top 10 running back, and I really do like the formality of this offensive line. Their defense is still, I think, going to be really good with a new play caller in Blake Gideon. But I look at their schedule. Colorado week 1, Clemson week 3. Clemson week 3. Couple matchups afterwards. The only 2 games that I'm really circling at this point is a trap game against Duke because it's going to be in Durham, and at the end of the year against Georgia inside the halls of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's not at Bobby Dodd, and it's also not at Sanford Stadium. So you tell me if they're able to beat Clemson and they only go on a run and they lose their 1 game to Georgia, they'd be undefeated in conference play. I'm very confident that can be a possibility. They get a rematch against Clemson, or they lose to Clemson. That's their only loss. And they're able to pull the wool over Dabo Swinney's eyes. I like this Yellow Jackets team a lot. I like Haynes King. I like the identity of what they stand for. And there is a legit opportunity to where, much like last season, as long as they can get to Charlotte, they can win the whole thing, and they're hosting a playoff game.
Tom?
Sorry, I'll mute myself there for a second.
He is really thinking about this.
My first one is Brian Kelly will get his buyout in 2025. I think this is his last year with LSU. I think the expectations for that program are so high that even though his buyout is in the neighborhood of $50 million by November, they'll wait until that threshold. So it drops by about roughly $9 million, save a little bit of change. But I think the fatigue has set in there in Baton Rouge with Brian Kelly. So if they're not performing, I could see Brian Kelly being out. And then this one's kind of a shot in the dark because I just have a feeling Gunnar Stockton is not going to finish the season as Georgia's starter. See that going in a couple of different directions. I don't wish anything ill upon anybody, so I'm not even going to say it out loud. But did anybody feel like super inspired by Gunnar Stockton last year in terms of his performance? Like, people, I think, were sick of Carson Beck a little bit. His attitude, his performance on the field wasn't there because he didn't have the supporting cast, obviously. So once Gunnar Stockton came in, it was a lot closer to, that guy looks just like Stetson Bennett, and he plays just like Stetson Bennett, and he plays that Georgia style of quarterback that they need, which is not a whole lot. You just need to be able to hand the ball off and make some good play action throws. So Gunnar Stockton, while there were positives, he puts himself in harm's way a lot. So does he finish the season as a starting quarterback because he can't or because he gets replaced? We'll see.
Florida State hires Fran Brown at the end of the season. My buddy Nate helping us with some of the producing. And so he'll be pissed off to hear that. But Florida State hires Fran Brown after their abysmal 6-6 season in which they have to relieve their head coach. I'll say this. I do like Mike Norvell a lot. Personally, I don't think he's ever going to win anything big at Florida State. So, all feelings aside, I don't think it's going to work out long term. I'd love to be proven wrong because I do like him a lot personally. But Florida State goes out and gets Fran Brown.
I got one more. The Heisman runner-up and Big Ten passing leader, Damon Williams. I love his tape. I love his tape. I love everything about his physical stature. And here's the other thing. I remember watching just 2 years ago a quarterback feel like that he was about ready to take that jump in the Big 12 with Jed Fish as his head coach. It's Noah Fafita. Him and Damon Williams had the exact same height, the exact same arm, the exact same measurables, the exact same weight. I love everything about what he provides for a Jed Fish offense. And I really like this wide receiver core for Washington. Denzel Boston is there. I'm very high on Amari Evans getting a breakout season. I think that Kevin Green's going to be really good in the slot. I think Chris Lawson coming in is going to be pretty good. Audric Harris is going to be pretty good. There's an opportunity to where he's going to put up insane numbers in the Big Ten. And maybe, just maybe, Washington's a dark horse to go ahead and go on a run to the college football playoff. But I'll tell you what, I am buying all the stock I can find on Damon Williams being the Big Ten passing leader this year.
Back to Tom. Do you have one more, Tom?
I don't think I have another one. I just find that interesting with all the reasons you just stated in terms of quarterback talent in the Big Ten. Now I'm actually thinking about which of those guys can actually break out. I could see Dylan Raiola being the passing leader because they made him throw the ball 400 plus times last year.
You're good now. It was a little tough to hear you for a sec, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I could see Dylan Raiola potentially being the passing leader just out of necessity. I think Matt Rule and company have done enough through the transfer portal to improve the offensive line, hopefully improve the running game for him. So he's not taking a beating. He has people to throw to, and he has time, all that sort of stuff. But I could see Dylan Raiola once again having a very high mark in terms of overall passing yardage this upcoming season. But Damon Williams, he's at least going to be fun, period. I'll watch Washington games.
I mean, let's be real. The leader's probably going to be Julian Sang or Lincoln Keenholz because he has 2 top 10 wide receivers at his disposal, including the best player in college football.
I mean, what's the chance those guys split the season?
What if they both go for over 1,400 yards, though? Just imagine that, too. That's a possibility with this offense. If anybody can get the best version out of wide receivers, it's a former wide receiver, now offensive play caller, Brian Hartline.
True. I think losing Evan Stewart is going to hurt Oregon's chances for Dante Moore to potentially set something like that, but I expect him to have a good year. Luke Altmaier will maybe be the most efficient quarterback in the Big Ten in 2025. Is he going to do anything crazy numbers-wise? Nope, but his TD to interception ratio is going to be exactly what you want.
Exactly.
All right. My last one, since I'm a homer. The ACC has a winning record against the SEC this year. I think they find a way to split on opening weekend and go 2-2. I think Clemson wins, and then maybe South Carolina drops a game up, in Blacksburg. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Syracuse can take down Tennessee with their new quarterback. And then I think on rivalry weekend, the SEC will go 1-3. That, unfortunately for me, that only loss to the SEC being when Florida State goes to Florida. But I'll take Georgia Tech in the upset there. And then
Louisville's going to beat Kentucky.
Yeah, I like Louisville over Kentucky. I like Clemson to get revenge against South Carolina.
VT versus Vandy week 2.
I got VT there. That's a tough one, but I got VT.
Brent Price screwed me over so bad last year with money purposes. I'm never pulling for Virginia Tech again.
So it is a hot take. We'll see, but that's my one. There was one other one that I was looking at too that is a game, but I just kind of I think Miami. I think Miami beats Florida early in the year too, so that gives me another win down there in South Beach. So ACC has a winning record. Honestly, I'm just trying to will that into existence so that me and Danny Cannell can have some fun on Twitter.
Yeah, so you can have some fun on Twitter.
Rest of the season won't be fun, but I'll have fun on X. All right, TJ Pittinger, Tom Hannifan, Cole Thompson, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday at noon, regularly scheduled time. Thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll talk to you soon.